Hey everybody, welcome to the tutorial for week 6. We're going to be focusing on coloring today. If you're just tuning in on the YouTube channel and you're wondering what this is a tutorial that follows an 8-week program through the Kentucky Valley Educational Co-op and Project Prevent, which is titled the Art Workshop. We offer this workshop in order to publish students' work. So students in 17 counties participate, submit their works at the end of this project. 30 students will go on to be published under the imprint of Stars Publishing. 6 of those students will go on to participate in an entrepreneurial challenge, which will basically comprise of each student building their own business model and business plan, centering around their published works. Today we're focusing on coloring, so I hope you have fun and enjoy checking out today's tutorial. Let's get started. Okay everybody, we're going to start out talking a little bit about color today, and as always I like to mention the different materials you can get. Crayons is one. They're probably the most readily available. Like I said in today's tutorial earlier today, that depending on what school you're attending, supplies may vary, grade level may vary, but crayons is something we typically all have available to us. So crayons is a real dry medium. That means it's not like watercolor or paint. It's in between chalk and wax. You can blend certain crayons. That means when you color and you color over it, you can blend some. Some brands you can't so much. It doesn't really matter what brand you choose or what brand you have, but crayons is an option. We'll be looking at that a little bit today too. Another option is watercolor. Watercolor sometimes comes, or mostly comes, in these trays. This is one I've used a lot. Sorry for the disgusting mess on the palette tray here, but I blend on this. Watercolor is great for blending. You can do a lot with watercolor. Another option that you have, of course, is colored pencils, and that's something that you can use. If you have paint and you want to use it, that's okay, but I'm staying away from paint. Markers is an option, but the one thing you have to watch out for markers is that you don't want to get in a situation where it's bleeding through to your paper. Now that was a pretty fancy brand, but you know what? If you don't have any of this, you don't need it. This is a set at the dollar store, and I love them. They're washable markers, sure, but you know what? They work really well. I like how they blend, and we'll be looking at these a little bit later. Now, one thing that I work a lot in is colored pencils. This is a really old set of colored pencils, but it's an option for you. Look at it, 69 cents. You get 12 colors, full length wood covered. That's pretty funny. These are pretty old. I sharpened them before I started, but yeah, this is just one option. Now, colored pencils blend. They vary though on how well they blend, depending on the brand. So if you want to blend, or you're looking to blend colors, it's something to consider. Now, if you've never had art class before, this is something that we really need to look at and talk about. The color wheel. Now, the color wheel is something that plays a huge part in coloring and in art in general. The color wheel is separated, as you see, into what we call warm and cool colors, and a better description of that is here. So for cool colors, as you can see, they go from yellow to orange, and then your darker hues, which the hue is what you see, so you can see the difference between the yellow and the blue. Now the hues that we're talking about is when we go from yellow to orange. There's all those variations in between. So as you get a little bit more red in there, so on and so forth. You're all the way to red. Then you start going into purple, adding blue, and then you go into green, adding green, and so on and so forth. The illustration that I did for a children's book, it's a church. This is all watercolor. Now, as you can see, watercolor is light, so you can blend it really well. You can overlap. Leaving a little bit of white too on the page helps a whole lot. One thing that I didn't mention, which is something that you're probably not going to use, but if you have them available, they're pretty cool. Oil pastels. Here's a great example of what I did with a frog. This is how well the colors blend. This is just a little sketch that I did for something I put together. These are using oil pastels. If you have oil pastels available, they blend very well. This is shiny. You can see the gleam because I sprayed a little bit of clear coat on there when I was finished. And I'll show you one more example that I did. This is a giant bird. It's kind of a strange thing, I know, but I like to play around with color to see just what happens. The white you see is actually white out on top of the oil pastels. So that's some options for coloring. Blending is important. If you want to blend, you want to use a medium that will take other colors on top of it pretty well. Oil pastels do it great. So there's some options for you and some examples. For the last example, I'll show you a page that I did for a children's book of my friend Bobby Sullivan. And we have the little squirrel. His name's Farrell. Farrell the squirrel. And the door I wasn't happy with. I'm going to redesign it. It's terrible. Pay no attention to that. But you can see how the colors lay on top of one another almost. And you can see through them. This is all watercolor. Okay, so let's look a little bit at technique now so you can get an idea, so when you start coloring your page, what you might want to use. Okay, everybody, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to be drawing something from this book here. Now this is a mini comic that was created by Louisville cartoonist Ben Sears. I really like his style, and one thing about it is that he uses basically a lot of primary colors, but he also uses hues of different colors too. So when you see shading, it's a great example. This book was self-published, so I think it's a great example. We're going to be drawing this particular character. The reason for that, you can see the different hues, as we call it. So that's a darker shade of that color that helps show shading. I think this is important to show, so we're going to be actually drawing and coloring this guy here. Now I've already sketched him out in between talking between the different segments. You probably can't see him that well, so for that reason what I'll do is go ahead and sketch him in using this black pencil here. So this is important to do. Now you have to be careful if you're going to use a wet medium, which we are going to be using, so this might come back to haunt me here pretty soon. It's important for us to remember that the wetness of whatever we're going to be using. So if we use, let's say, watercolor, if you use graphite pencil, it's actually going to pick up on that watercolor, so it may mix it. So your lines around your borders of your drawing may actually come out to be a little, I don't know, a little bit messy. So we're going to be careful about that. So if you're going to watercolor something, the best idea really is to sketch it in pencil, watercolor it first, okay, and then outline it in black, so that you don't have that problem that we probably will have, to be honest, with this one. But it's important for you to see what we're coloring. If you can't see it, then it may be a little difficult to understand how to apply this color. So what I'm doing now is I'm sketching out the character that you just saw in the book, in Ben's book here. Alright, we're going to sketch him out a little more, and we're going to then go into this. Now I'm going to be using some different color techniques for this. The techniques I'm going to be using is a variation of a few different ones. So I'm going to use a little bit of marker, a little bit of colored pencil, and use a little bit of everything to color this particular drawing. I want to be able to show you the different techniques and how to use them and stuff. So in order to make that really work, we're going to have to use some different, what we call medium. Okay, so medium, what that is what you're choosing to work in. If you're using watercolor, that's a medium. Color pencil is a medium, crayon's a medium, so on and so forth. So for the purpose of this drawing, like I said, I'm using a variation of a bunch. Okay, so when you start coloring at home, your illustrations, be aware of what you're going to be how you're going to be coloring, what medium you're using, because like I said, don't be penciling this in and then have to go back and fix that later because you have problems with this mixing. So there we go. I think it would be a good idea for us to start out first using a little bit of watercolor, not watercolor, but color pencil. Okay, so like I said, it's a cheap brand of color pencil, but it works great. I've already pre-sharpened all of them. I'm going to go ahead now and select a color that most closely represents the color of the character in the book. Now you can see I don't have any tan color, which is exactly what that is. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and pick something closest to that, which is going to be orange and a little bit of yellow. Now you can see now how these are close together on the hue scale, right? You can see the difference between these two. That's not too close together, but these two are pretty close together. So I start out now. Whenever you start out, don't press down so hard, okay? Everywhere, if you have any light reflecting on your character, that portion of your character is going to have to get the lighter hue of whatever color you're working in. So if you're working in blues, this would be a light blue here, right? And so on and so forth. So you want to be sure to be aware of where the light hit the character. Okay, so the light's coming in, let's say from this angle. That's how Ben had it with his character, so we're going to follow the same thing. Okay, on the shoulders he'll have light here. And it's not all going to be, you're going to have to blend some of this. So some portions you'll have overlap, and that's fine to have overlap because that's going to where your blending is going to come in. So you can see how I've went over portions of this with this lighter color first, right? And then what I'm going to do is go back and go over it with the darker hue of the same color. I'm only going to be coloring in the areas that are receiving the most light. The block in the wall where you crash through, things like that. Okay? It's really good to look off something someone else has done, and then what you'll do is go and try to color something similar to what they colored. So you can see now how this is starting to pick up areas that are darker. Of course, will be more orange. We're going to be using, like I said, a variation of things on this, so bear with me as we go through it. Don't press down so hard. Notice how there's not a lot going on with how hard I'm pressing down right now. All I'm doing is wanting to get an idea of what is going to be where in terms of my color, right? Of course, this will be darker. Once you have a baseline idea of that, what you can do is go back through in a little bit, and you can make it a little bit darker. So colored pencils blend not as great as you might think or hope. When you overlap these edges, like right through here, you can see how this color is starting to pick up a little bit and change. Sometimes you may have to press down harder to get the blending, sometimes you don't. What I'm doing with this is just going over now the edges of where the two colors would meet. I'm making sure that the colors blend. I want to be aware of where that light's coming from. Okay, I have a tutorial that's really cool that you can go to on theholler.org on shadow and light with drawings. That was from last workshop. Be sure and check that out. So you can see now how this kind of changes. You have yellow to orange. Now that I've done that, I'm going to play around a little bit with some markers. Markers are, like I said earlier, they're a little messy. You want to be careful. They will bleed through your paper, and so you want to be aware of that. I think actually what I'll do before I start working on markers is I'll go with crayons. Everybody's got crayons laying around, so let's do that. I like to spill them all out and see what I'm working with here. Okay. All right. Awesome. So these are my options, minus a few broken ones that I have laying in here. Again, I've started now with this orange color, orange to yellow. Okay, you can mix a little bit. I'm going to actually start to go now with a brownish top orange, dark yellow orange. And what I'll do is I'll start to pick up this shadow a little bit deeper meaning a little darker, like this. Notice where I'm coloring. You can see where the block, you can see that part of the block, you can't see the top part of the block, right? So what I'm doing now is just making sure that all these shadowed areas get colored in really good and filled in nice. Stay within the lines for you, the younger students. If you're creating something where you're using color, try to be as neat as you can, unless your book is a messy book. If you've ever looked at some children's books, the illustrator will purposefully draw or color, in a real messy style. If that's the look you're shooting for, then that's awesome. If not, then be aware of where you're coloring and how you're coloring, okay? You can see now how this is starting to come out a little bit better in terms of the shadowing. Colored pencil, you have to layer and layer and layer. So here's proof you can blend with a crayon, but what you want to be aware of whenever you're doing that is you don't want to press down too hard at first. A lot of students want to go ahead and get that really dark shadow look. KVEC markers is another really cool way to color. They're a little expensive though, and so for that reason I'm not even really talking about them all that much. Now I've picked another hue, I should say, of yellow. This is yellow orange. I just used dark yellow orange, and what I'm doing with this one now is really starting to get into the more shadow area here and pulling that color out, so you can see that this is darkened in a lot more. If the screen's a little wobbly, I apologize for that. I'm still working around with a few things in the studio here, trying to get it to look the best I can with the equipment I have. I don't have a whole lot, so I'm working with what I have, you know. Now you can see here the color continues to blend in. The color continues to be darkened. Don't jump in and go straight for the darkest colors. Take your time with it, you know. Have a little bit of a method with it here to not place all your color on there at once, but go light to dark. Always light to dark with your color. It's easier, just like with anything, like with cold weather, like you don't know how warm or cold it's going to be one day, let's say, or you don't really know what the weather will be like. It's better to have more clothes, jackets and things, so you could take off that jacket later on in the day if it gets too hot, than it is to have not enough so that you need a jacket and you don't have it. Believe it or not, this is a lot of how coloring works as well. Okay, now you can see now I've darkened in a lot of the areas. I started out with yellow, so I'm stuck with it. So what I'll do now is go back over. It's good to apply different hues of one color. You can see now this is yellow and this is yellow, right? This is colored pencil, this is crayon. However though, this looks like a different color only because I'm pressing down harder with the crayon now. Okay, I could have got a similar color hue, I should say, with the colored pencils that I'm getting right now with the crayon, but I chose to press lightly. You will have different hues of one color based on how hard you press down, so keep that in mind. So you can see here how this goes from dark yellow, light yellow to orange, but yet the only color that I've used for this section up here has been yellow. Of course the oranges, I've used a couple of different oranges for that, but you can see how that works now. Okay, so I'm not trying to add all this color at once. I'm going slowly. Now this is the same thing with KVEC markers. If you have KVEC markers, I know there's a lot of aspiring young illustrators and artists that are participating in this. Some of you probably have access to KVEC markers, especially if you like anime or manga. You want to layer it though, similar to this, okay, with those markers. So you can see now how that's starting to turn out some. Now I don't want to forget about my block. I have all this block laying around up here. For the purpose of this block though on the wall, I'm actually going to go with gray at the bottom. Now, this is actually black, but what I'm doing is I'm choosing to press down very lightly, and I'm going to put the darker portions at the bottom, and we'll go light as we go up on the wall. And what they'll do is they'll give us a nice effect. We'll have more shadow coming in. So as you can see, I'm just filling this space in right now, and I'm going to avoid coloring over my pieces of block. Same for this side. Just color that in. Make sure that whatever color you're shooting for. Now I'm pressing down a little harder than what I'd like to right now. Even can't stress enough how you should really pay close attention on going from light to dark. Okay. It's really important. So you can see now up here around the crash is not colored in yet, but we'll work on that now. The black, you can see, what I'm going to do with it is I'm going to go down towards the bottom where the most shadows is going to be. This is crayon steel we're using. Go around the crack a little bit of the wall, and then up through here. I'm stopping there though, okay, for a reason. In a little bit I'm going to come back to it. I'm actually going to fill that in a little more, okay. But I just want the shadow to be pretty intense right through here, as this is the portion where he's actually breaking through this wall. We can imagine the light coming from up above. There's a different methods you can use to decide where the light's going to come from. Some of the greatest comic artists that you see in comics today, Jim Lee comes to mind, Frank Miller, he was a great, they had a really strong talent in showing lighting with color, minimal color sometimes even. So there we have these two sides that have been darkened in some. Now in order to show that this is this is going to be lighter than what we the rest of the area, is I'll take this color now and go over all of it. So even though this is black or gray that I started out with, when I start laying this blue down over top of the black and gray, you can see how this mixes and it actually starts to blend. So as I get to the top of the page up here, the black will run out, and what I'll be left with then is, see, the blue just comes right out. So you can see how the shadowing works for that. Now I am overlapping a little bit here. You can see how I went over my letters. I've colored over some portions because I'm hurrying for the purpose of the video. But you take your time with yours, okay? Also, something to point out right now, this is not two different hues of a color of blue. This is only the color blue and then mixed over top of the gray or the black. That's not a hue. There's a hue of gray or black there, and there's also a hue of blue. So even though this looks dark to light here, those are two different colors. So don't be confused hue with the different shades of color. Well, I mean when compared to one another or laid on top of one another. Hue is the different shades of one particular color. That's what it is. So this is not. This is a mixture of two colors to give the effect of shadowing. Okay, so there's different ways you can do that. Now you can notice here for the wall, I'm just filling in some area now so we can tell this is the rest of the wall on that side. And what I might do after I finish coloring in this area with the blue is I'll go back, I'll grab the black again. This time I'm going to color over top of the blue instead of the blue coloring over top of the black. And the reason I'm going to do that is I'm actually going to extend the shadowing. So there's that. Now watch, I'm going to take the black very lightly now. I'm going to blend over top of this. So you can't really tell. Well, you can definitely tell the two colors are there, but the goal is to not be able to tell where one color stops and the other begins. If I had more time on this video, I could do this very precisely, or very precise I should say, or whatever, but the video is got to be kept at a certain lit, so for that I'm just barely going to go over just to give you the idea. So there you go. You can see how this starts to work now, how the black and the blue work together to give the effect of there being some shadow in the wall there. Okay, so just barely press down around the edges. You may color over another color with one color, then go back in like I've done here. Start out with black, color over it with blue, go back and take your black then, and then color over the previous color. Hope that makes sense, but you can see what I've done. Alright, so we have now basically the wall and the character. So let's go with marker now. With markers, if you have something like this that I showed you earlier, where you have all these hues, this is a really great color wheel. So you could choose an orange and a yellow, and you have this variation of this one particular hue or color. Okay, so you have light to dark. So if you don't have access to a wide range of one similar color, then you may be in a little trouble. You can also blend mediums, all together. So you may blend colored pencil, and you may blend that with watercolor, and then you blend the watercolor with crayon. I mean, there's no limit to what you can do. Some things do not mix very well. This particular medium, the marker, it doesn't blend really well with crayon, but you can still use it in certain areas to emphasize one particular type of color you're going for. This is a washable marker, so it's not going to be as it's not going to apply as well as a regular marker over top of the crayon, but you can get an idea on how this would work. I do have other markers I could pull out here in a second and show you how that would blend a little better, but the washable markers, you know, they have a different makeup, chemical makeup in here that doesn't allow it to blend real well with other medium. Okay, so you can see though how this is starting to come together a little better. You can start to see the shadowing a little better, and so on and so forth. So as you're working on your particular illustrations, you may decide to blend medium. You may decide to stick with one and just have different hues of those colors. It's up to you what you do, but my biggest advice though is that you should go from light to dark and don't press down so hard starting out. Okay, so now we have a variation of this hue, these colors for the shadow. I may go ahead now and grab some yellow, and I may just go over some of the far reaching lines and things for the light here. I'm leaving white in there, as you can see the white in between for a reason. I think it adds to it. You can see how this mix over top of your pre-existing colors. This character kind of reminds me of the Thing, if you know anything about the comic book character Thing. He's one of the, if I'm not mistaken, Fantastic Four. Even though I am a cartoonist, even though I love comics, I don't know a whole lot about mainstream comics, believe it or not. I used to, but there's characters that I'm familiar with. Thing is one of them for sure. So you can see how this kind of works. So we forgot all about our block, didn't we? But that's okay. We can go back and add some to them so you can see how this works. The block is, you know, there's angles to it because it came from the wall. So there's going to be light and dark on those angles. So now we'll use this marker to kind of finish up the darker portions of the block flying out. Of course, now the block doesn't match the wall. I just realized that. The block sort of matches him. So maybe pieces of his hand broke apart as he was crashing through the wall. I don't know. It's up to you. So I have another type of marker here. This one's going to be a lot more intense. You can see how this would work then if we were blending with stronger makeup, chemical makeup than the washable marker, and you could see how this would be a little more difficult then to blend, because the hue of this it's a lot stronger. Okay, so it's a good idea, whatever you choose to use to work with, to practice a little bit, like sketch out on a piece of paper what it's going to do. When you mix it, sketch it out first. There's nothing worse than working through an entire illustration, penciling it out, taking your time, and then you go to work on it and you start to add color and it doesn't work well, and then you messed it up. It is a terrible feeling. Have to start over, do everything from the beginning. So we've added some hue here. We see how the color variation works. I think it works really nice. I think it looks pretty good. We can add some dark in here to finish up the eyes. I'm really thankful that that what we chose to outline this with didn't smear too bad on here. There's some areas, I don't know if you can really tell, but there you go. You can see now. After you finish all of this, you can go back then with your pen, and you really can. You can add in the darker lines like I'm doing now. This is a charcoal pencil, but it picks up about the same as it would a pen would pick up on the video. So you can see how the darker lines really help to bring out the character. Okay, so just play around with your colors, see what happens when you mix them, see what happens whenever you use two different medium together, see what that looks like. Have fun with this, okay? This should be a project that you have a lot of fun with. Have fun with your illustrations. That's the main point of all this, okay? It isn't about your ability to draw, it's about having fun in this project, telling a cool story with your pictures and words. Thumbs up, our first tutorial on color. I think we'll have one more of these just so that we get an idea on how mediums work and what are colors in terms of the color wheel. How do they apply to one another? We all know red, green, blue, yellow, purple, but what happens though when we put purple against yellow? You can also convey feeling with color, which is something a lot of illustrators will do with their illustrations. I don't know if you want to put that much thought into yours, but it's something to consider whenever you're approaching designing a book and coming up with the drawings for the book and the story. So thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Hope it's been helpful. There'll be more applied later on as we move forward. Good luck on your creation of your book. I look forward to seeing what you've done. Be sure and share your work on theholler.org, and good luck creating. Until next time.